19 past 10, you're listening to ABC Pilbara and ABC Kimberley, and as you've heard over the past day or so, a bill has passed through state parliament, which is paving the way for the final closure of the former asbestos mining town of Wittenoom. The bill will enable the government to demolish and remove the last remaining buildings in the town site, which Lands Minister John Carey told me yesterday he hopes will put an end to idiotic tourists visiting the town. But there are fears that visitors won't be aware of the risks of contamination in other nearby areas like the gorge. Melita Markey is the CEO of the Asbestos Diseases Society of Australia. Melita, good morning.
Oh, good morning, Eddie. Thanks for having me on this morning.
How significant a step is the passing of this bill?
Look, it's a great first step to acknowledging Australia's greatest industrial disaster. But there's a lot of work still to go to ensure that we properly remind people of what happened and also protect and prevent people from becoming ill into the future.
So let's talk a bit about that, both about reminding and remembering and then, as you say, protecting people into the future. How real are the risks still in surrounding areas beyond the town site itself?
Oh, the gorges all around, they're spectacular scenery. They're absolutely jam-packed with tailings because that's where they were dumped. So if you can imagine a tooth being drilled with a cavity and you fill it full of amalgam, if you take a drone above those gorges, they're packed to the rafters with tailings. So they're just all blowing and they're running down through Mill Street in the wet season. So yeah, the land is very contaminated because they haven't removed all the dumped asbestos.
Should it be removed? Can it be removed? Is that practical?
Well, I can't speak as an expert in the area, but what we have been in discussions with is looking at perhaps sealing them in the gorges, like perhaps spraying it down and perhaps remediating it so it's providing less harm.
And as you say, for the time being, that has not happened. So what needs to happen so that visitors, and there are many visitors to the Karijini National Park who might not speak English fluently as well, what needs to happen so that people in the area are aware of these dangers?
Well, what we take it that there's a whole generation, our research across social media, we've talked to the younger people, they're just not aware. We've got so many visitors to WA and so many people moving to WA from the eastern states that aren't aware of our history and of Wittenoom. And in fact, they were running races in Wittenoom in 1991. We still had over 40,000 tourists in 1993, every year since. So there hasn't been a lot of information for people to realise. So there are some tourists that are just playing Russian roulette, but the majority we spoke to were quite horrified and rang us after they realised that we ran our campaign warning people not to visit Wittenoom at the end of last year as part of Asbestos Awareness Week. So we would believe by creating a lasting memorial in Karijini or the Pilbara and Tom Price, often where people congregate, meet and go in convoys together, and they say, let's go and explore the gorges, let's look at this, they drive through Wittenoom, what have you, or they camp down there. They'll see this really moving memorial, very similar to the HMS Sydney and Geraldton, and realise that a great tragedy took place there and it's still unsafe to go there until something can be done to remediate the area.
What response have you had from communities, from government, when it comes to this idea of having a permanent memorial?
Look, we had a meeting with the former Lands Minister, Mr Tony Booty, and look, he was receptive. He said to me that, look, perhaps you should talk to Lottery West about applying for a grant or something like that. And I said, look, really, the victims and families and the people that are still dying from their association with them, when we lost a jockey in November, I think ABC interviewed his wife in December last year. You know, they want something from the government. They want acknowledgement. They want to know that Australia's worst industrial disaster, the second largest in the world, which is still killing people, that they are remembered, they have a place to grieve. You know, if you think about the Bali bombing, if you lost family and loved ones in Bali, you can go there and you can grieve at that site. With Wittenoom closing and the whole area really too contaminated to visit, people can't go and grieve for their lost loved ones or even go back and remember the time when they lived in the town and were happy before they lost so many family members and friends. So we really believe, and our members are telling us, and the community is telling us, they want a lasting memorial. They want a big ceremony from the government. They really want it to be a place where they can go, grieve, remember, and also send a message to corporations. You can't treat workers like this. You know, send a message to tourists. Don't take the risk. You know, think about it. So there's a whole lot of things tied into it, and also just sending a respect of love and compassion to people who've lost their family members and friends.
And you'd like to see 2 memorials, is that right? One in the Pilbara as well as one in Perth?
Yes, because we still have a significant amount of people that have passed from asbestos diseases, you know, from working in the Midland Railway, you know, people renovating homes that are now the new cohort coming through. There's so many people locally. We need something. We do have a small park in Solidarity Park opposite Parliament House. We thank WA and the CFMEU for allowing us to be in, but that recognises workers who have fallen from asbestos diseases. It doesn't recognise their families, the wives and the children, you know, wives who washed their husbands' clothes and succumbed to mesothelioma. There's a significant amount of non-occupational exposure here in WA and the Pilbara, particularly in Wittenoom, that we feel needs to be reminded for the public.
I'm speaking with Melita Markey, the CEO of the Asbestos Diseases Society of Australia. Yesterday when I spoke with the Lands Minister, John Carey, he was reluctant to give a time frame of when work would begin to start this removal, this demolition of the remaining buildings, compulsory acquisitions, not too many more of those to go. But he said the government didn't want to rush given the potential risks to workers who would be involved in the demolition and the removal. He didn't want to rush and set a time frame. How quickly would you like to see the government move on these next steps?
Look, to be honest, I don't think necessarily demolishing those buildings will make a great difference, because our feedback is people are camping and driving through. They're not necessarily, they're having a look, but it's the beauty of the area to stay in camp. You know, I don't know whether necessarily demolishing those buildings will really have such a great impact. I think that they'd be better off putting the money into a memorial and reminding people just not to go there, and actually reminding people, talking about West Australia's greatest industrial disaster. And I think having that conversation in the community so young people understand what's happening, this new generation get a sense of, you know, what happened in the past, you know, the environment up there. I think that would have a greater impact than spending a lot of money putting workers at risk, as you say. It's got to be a very sensitive and carefully done project. So I think let's just get something done now, a memorial, and we can then, and a good campaign, work with us at the Asbestos Disease Society, put a very effective campaign out in Asbestos Awareness Week and prior to Christmas, with people, you know, renting holiday houses looking to go camping. We wanted to make sure people were reminded not to do it, and we had such a fantastic response. So I think that would be money better spent in the interim while they work with the experts on how they would tackle that project for the safety of the workers. So I think, and younger people, really, the response we've had has been fantastic. Just saying, we really didn't realise we wouldn't have taken our children there.
So the focus, the priority now, in your view, should really be on education and awareness.
Yes, and I think we can do that with a lasting memorial and acknowledging that. And once we realise that, you know, we know we have the World Trade Center, we've got the Bali bombing, we've got all these amazing places to remember what happens when people's lives are taken wrongfully. And this is what it is, they're all wrongful deaths. We need to acknowledge that, and through acknowledging that, we don't forget and we realise that area is unsafe. So I think that's a very powerful way of getting the message across without risking anyone's lives or having a complex project to deal with, which would cost many, many millions of dollars.
Melita, thanks for your time this morning.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for supporting us. And if your listeners could please go to our change.org petition, Wittenoom Memorial, and please sign it. We'll be presenting that to the Minister as well when we go and approach the new Minister, Minister Carey, about helping us move forward with our plans for a memorial.
Thanks, Melita. Melita Markey, the CEO of the Asbestos Diseases Society of Australia. It's 10 on ABC Kimberley and ABC Pilbara.